Ladies and gentlemen, here we are. Welcome to the podcast, as yet untitled podcast, but that will change soon once I get an idea for what's happening. We're here today with one of the few clarinetists on planet Earth with a story worth selling to a screenwriter. Not many clarinet players have a story worth much, but this man certainly does. Legendary baker, musician, hair icon, computer programmer, comeback kid, James Zimmerman. So James, I've given you a bit of a teaser there to get people interested, hook them in, reel them into the show. But for people who don't know much about you, besides that one sentence flattering summary, I hope, tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here. Quick rundown of how I got from there to here. I'm from the East Coast. I'm from New Jersey, just outside of New York. I grew up in theater, doing acting and singing and dancing. But when it came to choose a profession, I wanted one that would be stable enough to have a wife and children, because that's my main game. So an orchestra seemed like the most approximate to corporate America type job that a artist could have. So I went the orchestra route. I went all over the country and world studying, landed in Nashville, Tennessee, also known as Music City, in 2008 as principal clarinetist of the Nashville Symphony. As soon as I got here, I started growing my family. I built a side career as a studio musician, which is still active, where I play for Netflix and video games and Amazon shows and anything you can think of, theme parks, all kinds of corporate music, political stuff. And I also teach. And until 2020, I was principal clarinetist of the Nashville Symphony, where I was ousted over a diversity agenda, which timed out well because I spent 2020 right here in this very basement learning to write software. So I've been working in big tech as my main gig for the last 5 years, which is much better than being in an orchestra right now, because orchestras have lost their minds. They're not good workplaces like they used to be. So I work from home. I have a flexible schedule where I can still do my art stuff on the side, and I still have plenty of time to bake bread as an obsession / hobby, which I do, and I like to post pictures of those on the internet. And yeah, I'm fighting the good fight, not just for myself, trying to get back into the orchestra game, into the arts game, but for everybody that's like me, white, male, straight, Catholic, and Republican. It's like the ultimate terrible combination of things that you can be if you're trying to be an artist right now. But I still have my chops, I still have my knowledge, and I'm only 43 years old, so I've got a lot of playing left in me, and I'm just trying to figure out the right place to do it.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. It seems like you do most things at a fairly obsessive level. So from clarinet takes massive sacrifice, huge, sacrifice basically everything. I haven't climbed to the standards that you have or the achievements that you have, but I have done the audition run. I know how crushing it can be to prepare for months to lose. I've won 3 auditions in my life, for nothing like amazing auditions, but I know what it takes. I know the obsession that you need. And it's curious, whenever I meet a fellow obsessed person, they seem to just direct that at more than one thing in their life. And they're not just high level at clarinet. Like in your case, do you think there's like a bit of a philosophy with doing something exceptionally well, like you do with bread, you do with you clearly take your X personality on formerly known as Twitter seriously. You write carefully, you make good points, you don't make mistakes, you don't make typos, you don't make errors, you never say anything stupid. All of your bread looks amazing. Your clarinet playing is excellent. Is that like a lifelong, or like how do you say it? It's like a bent you have that predates even music.
Sure. Well, you said obsessiveness, and I think obsessiveness has gotten a bad rap here recently. We have a disorder named after it, obsessive compulsive disorder, and we like to demonize those people, and we like to take anybody that is really into stuff and put them on the autism spectrum somewhere. But obsession is great if you can dial it into something productive. I mean, you don't want to be sitting online obsessing about politics or strange ideologies or video games or something that's not productive. Like, I have just realized I have the ability to hyper focus on things that I love and things that I'm naturally inclined to do. So music, cooking, being a dad, exercising, writing, these are great obsessions, healthy obsessions even. And I appreciate that you recognize that. It's not easy to reach a level of excellence in anything that will bring fulfillment. But when dialed in the right way and tempered with a normal life on the side, which is something I've always wanted to have, is the most normal life possible. Your obsessions can be channeled into things that are productive. So yeah, bread is another one. That's a hobby I took up a few years ago. I've always kind of made my own bread leading up to 2022 when I started learning from a friend in the Nashville Symphony who spent the pandemic learning to do it. But it's just an example. You asked about like a formula for to apply to your life if you're an obsessive person. It's just a matter of doing things repeatedly and saying to yourself, how can I get a little better at this today? If you're in the gym, how can I lift a little more weight than I did last week? If you're making a new recipe, how can I make this a little bit more balanced? If you're playing a clarinet excerpt that you've played before, you're playing a symphony for the 10th time, how can I go deeper into the music? It's just level upon level upon level across a long timeline. And that's the route to excellence that I've tried to take in everything I do.
Surely it's like the only way to, I don't think there's many options as a classical musician other than trying to perpetually polish and make things slightly better, because you would go crazy when I suppose your options are complacent or insane. Those are your two options. Either you can play, in my case, my short career was in opera and ballet. I could choose to play Tosca for the 30th time. I could choose to play the bass clarinet part the way I'd already always done it, or I could choose to kind of, I've got my job, got my salary. I could either just like degrade slowly over time, care less, or I could try to do something better every single time. And I think that's the path that leads you to survival. It's the survival path. But a lot of people do choose the gradual rot, the gradual musical rot approach. What do you reckon the proportions are in classical music? Do you first of all, do you agree with my dichotomy that you can kind of approach your post-audition life as either a lifelong optimizer and someone who takes the music as seriously as the day they won their audition, or the people who sort of loaf a little bit, musically loaf, let's say. Those that I don't really believe in maintenance. It doesn't really exist. You're either growing or decaying, in my opinion. I think that applies to music as well. What's kind of breakdown from inside an elite? Because you were in a serious orchestra. First of all, like Nashville's it's not a little orchestra. It's not a small orchestra. It's not a community orchestra. It's a serious orchestra. But yeah, I'm curious. What are your thoughts on those two? Do you even agree with my framework there?
Yeah, there's a ton of burnout in the industry, and people get their great job, which takes, like you said earlier, an enormous amount of sacrifice, and it's a huge roll of the dice for anybody, even if you're a really terrific player with a great education. The odds of winning an audition are so bad. Like, there were over 300 people that applied for my job in Nashville for one spot. And so I had the best playing day of my life that day, but still it could have gone to any other number of great players. So, okay, you break through that barrier, you get in there, you're doing the job, you get tenure, and then what? Do you try to go for the next biggest orchestra or what? Because the people in the New York Philharmonic and the Boston Symphony, they are just as burned out as anybody, perhaps more so. Those are some of the unhappiest orchestras in the United States. I've, played as a guest in some orchestras like that. And, there's the happy person in those orchestras is a rare bird. So for me, I am not a careerist type when it comes to music and my musical career. I was always of the philosophy that what I'm trying to do here is just get better at my playing and refine my craft, find a deeper level of fulfillment, and professional success will be a consequence of that approach. And that has always worked really well. So I never really got burned out in the orchestra because I always approached it like, yeah, this is cool. It's making me enough money to live. I have a fulfilling life outside of this place. And so when I'm here, I'm trying to get better. And then I close the case and go home and play with my children. So it's a combination of the approach to your career and the approach to your normal life. I might be sounding like a broken record already when I keep talking about norms and having a so-called normal life, which is a difficult thing to talk about in modern times because the very idea of definition and norms are under assault nonstop by progressive agendas infecting everything that we do. But like I said, when I was talking about how I chose the orchestra path, I have always thought that the stuff that has worked for thousands of years for people still works. Like, get married, have children, go to church, pass down your values, build a legacy, mow your grass. These are the things that are likely to bring happiness. And you're going to have to do something to finance all that. So if you can find something meaningful to finance your life, that's great. Which is why, in 2020, when my orchestra started to implode over diversity agendas, I said to myself, you know, the fun aspect of this workplace has just gone down the tubes. So it's not worth doing this anymore. Like, I'd like to play in an orchestra because above all else, it's fun. You know, you're not going to get rich doing that. Even if you're one of the highest paid orchestral musicians in the world, there's still a lot more money to be made in law or business or medicine. And I sacrificed any of that potential to do what I think is fun. So when the fun aspect is removed, then it's like, okay, I'm perfectly happy to go do something else for money. And software's it's a low barrier of entry, and it selects for hardworking people of high IQ, which I have always thought that I am, and I've made it work. So, you know, you have to have a healthy attitude if you're going into music, and healthy expectations about what role are you going to let your music play in your life. Is it going to be your religion? If it is, it's going to end you in misery, I promise. I've seen so many people with spiritually unfulfilling outside lives who pour all their eggs into the music basket, and then when they burn out because they have nothing else, they become very jaded and very negative and very obsessive about things that aren't good to obsess about, like being on committees or stuff like that. It's just, it's bad news. So
being
again,
the president
norms.
of the social club, you know, that can really start to maybe it's. I do think that it sounds kind of whatever. If you don't want to have kids, you don't want to have kids. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But sometimes you see unseriousness in people, like an unserious attitude to serious things in people who have just chosen completely to bypass that in life. It is phenomenal how much perspective it gives you, and how much just like, it doesn't matter how terrible your day at work is. If you do come home to kids that hug your leg, it really does change your framework on everything. You realize that, you know, just because the second oboe was rude to you, or because the conductor gave you a funny look, or said something a little bit insulting, or the intonation wasn't how you wanted it, you do just immediately zoom out and you realize, like, I do have a greater role in this planet than doing an excellent job. Not to diminish doing an excellent job. Do an excellent job. Have pride in your work. Stay better. Keep getting better, and that kind of thing. I'm surprised you're from New Jersey. I thought you were a Nashville person. Did you know that I went to school in Harworth? I don't know if you know Harworth, New Jersey, but that was my primary school for a couple of years.
No, I have a friend who lives there. He and his wife are New York musicians. She's in the Philharmonic, and they live there. I've never been there, but I know the name of the city.
Yeah, it's a nice little sleepy little town. I was there for grades 1, 2, and 3 when my
How
my
about
dad was
that?
also a software engineer. He didn't get spectacularly sacked like you. Do they say sack in your country for fired? Is that an expression you have in America?
Sacked is good. We don't usually say it here, but I like it. It's very British.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's an Australian term. He also got sacked, but in not an exciting or noble way like you. He didn't get martyred, let's say. At least, you know, there's probably nothing nice about getting martyred. I left an organization that had clearly gone off the rails, a musical organization that had decided, like you said, to care a lot more about identity than anything else. And the writing was on the wall. The decision makers were explicit about it, said your career progression is over now because of your identity, and you are the bottom priority for literally everything. And you don't need to tell me twice. You know, I say that to everyone. You know, I say that if you are a person, whatever, you are a Croat and you find yourself in a weird like Serbian neighborhood and everyone hates you, leave. You know, get away from this situation. If there's generational hatred for you because of your identity, or if there's any hatred for you because of your identity, just leave. I mean, I left and got a job in Europe because it was fun. And I've been an ethnic and linguistic minority in an orchestra before. I loved every second of it. Like, I can tell you, it's not so bad being a minority either. Even if I've experienced both ends of that equation. I'm looking through some of the things you've said that I think are cool, but I'm curious about the sort of unseriousness of social media and orchestras, because if you think about any other like cultural achievement that's on the level of the symphony orchestra, pick something artistic like the Sistine Chapel, or I don't know, it's architecture. You don't see any effort to diminish it or mute it or cover it up or try to pretend it doesn't exist. If anything, you see spotlights on it and you see tourism, you see high effort to promote it and bring people towards it. And like it or not, more people see an orchestra online than they do in real life. And I think that going in real life is 10 times more powerful, but there's 10 times more exposure to the orchestra on the online. And it's across the board a bit unserious. It's a bit cringy, a bit trendy. everything's a trend, everything is a joke, everything is about everything but the music. I'm curious if have you thought at all about the public digital face of the orchestra, and did it have any part in your life or your story? It was just complete background noise to the actual musicians.
Yeah, definitely. So there's always this question of like, how can we make this relevant? 'Cause I think you just made an astute point that, architecture and the Sistine Chapel and the Louvre are all, overflowing with patrons all the time. And we're hearing this doomsday prognosis for orchestras for years now. The audience is dying and everybody can't sit still long enough to consume it live. And what is the answer to all this? So I have a big effort in across my career to bring classical music to regular people. I think a lot of or classical music content that I see out there is geared towards other classical musicians. It's made at a very high level, like kind of out in the weeds where only the intelligentsia can understand it. Where I have always wanted regular people, normies, to understand, this is really great. Like coming to a symphony is really, really great. There's nothing like it. It's an immersive experience. It's a social experience where you get to put on your fancy clothes and, take yourself seriously. Like I am serious about how great I think these works are. I mean, that's part of how I avoided getting burned out. Like sometimes you'll be sitting in the middle of a concert resting and you're listening to the string section play some piece like Barbara Adagio for strings, and you think to yourself, man, somebody wrote this piece. Like some human mind came up with this. I'm sitting right in the middle. I got the best seat in the house on the stage. How can I make this palatable to the person who knows nothing? And I thought the answer to that was like treating orchestral musicians like athletes, like stars. I think it's cool if individual musicians have social media followings in the modern age. I think a perfect example of this is a guy in the Nashville Symphony now. His name is Will Leathers. He's the new principal trumpet. He's a social media wizard. He's an incredible trumpet player. He's hilarious. I've met him once on a recording session. He's just got all the magnetism that you need. Like if I were a normie and I came across this guy, I'd say, yeah, I would definitely want to go to the Nashville Symphony and hear this guy play. So in that sense, you're a Will Leathers fan. You're not necessarily a symphony fan, but Will Leathers is your point of entry to get into the door of a symphony. And then you might say, man, there's a whole bunch of other stars on this stage too. And you can, follow the game, follow the audition circuit like a sport. And so that's kind of how I've tried to present myself out on social media as a recent auditioner and audition winner of the Knoxville Symphony. Like, hey, if I win this thing, and I'm getting a lot of X followers by putting my process out there, putting up my excerpts, my playing. Like I had a lot of people say, hey, if you win this thing, I'm going to come hear you. So it's like, yeah, my strategy's working. Like people are interested in me and my playing, and they don't know anything about symphonies because I can't gather a symphony to make a piece of content for my YouTube channel if I'm not in one. But, you could come hear me, and this is where I do most of my best playing is in an orchestra. So that was always my approach to cultivating the art form. I think every musician, if you're a master classical musician, has some role to play in the preservation of the art form. So for me, I like social media. I think x.com is the greatest website I've ever been on. There's so many smart people looking to have high level discourse there. And I present myself as that guy who plays clarinet. I got some good takes on politics and sports and cultural issues, but I actually bring something to the table that is high level, interesting, and not AI slop, which is taking over everything right now. Like what I do is the real thing. So maybe that gets people in the door.
It is creative. I think it's a good outlet as someone who I have a sort of a slightly controversial opinion that just typical classical musician isn't necessarily a creative artist. I think that what they do is much closer to what like an artisan does. So like someone who makes
Absolutely
beautiful furniture, someone who can really has all the skills, the precision, the skills, the knowledge, the generational knowledge of even how to make a beautiful ornate chair, like a woodworker,
yes.
that kind of thing. I've always thought of a classical musician as more like a woodworker, but the common wisdom and the belief and the self-belief among most classical musicians is they are deeply creative people. And I think that dissonance causes a lot of mental anguish in in classical musicians, because they turn up to the orchestra. We've all been there, and you realize, wait a second, I can control nothing, pretty much. Like, even if you're a principal woodwind player, you don't get to choose the pitch center, you don't get to choose the tempo, you don't get to really choose the interpretation, except within a microscopic little band on the little error margin where you might be able to move something a tiny little bit, maybe dynamics, a little bit of flexibility with that. But even dynamics are dictated to you by your musicians that are sitting around you who are playing at certain volumes, and you need to make decisions about that. Like, you're not really a creative person, but you are highly skilled, and there's nothing wrong with being a highly skilled furniture maker. It's like, whatever, like, get over it. It's not the end of the world.
You say furniture maker. I use an animator. I just posted about this the other day. Like, if you have a job in the 1930s for Disney and you're drawing hundreds of pictures of Mickey Mouse, and you go to the theater and you watch something that you animated on the screen and it looks all smooth and it's really terrific, you can take some real pride in that. But you didn't come up with the story. You didn't create Mickey Mouse. That's Walt Disney that came up with all that. So yeah, you're a craftsman. You're an artisan. You're someone with skills. You're like a carpenter or something like that. So embrace that is what I figure that you should do. Like, say, yeah, I have skills here. I have played my scales. I have done my long tones. I have sat in the practice room for 8 hours a day for a decade to be able to make this sound. But if you want to create, then compose or play jazz, because in jazz you can improvise, you can come up with your own stuff right there on the spot. That's creation. Playing in an orchestra, I totally agree. It's an artisan thing.
X comment. Maybe I'm misattributing it, so maybe correct me if not. But you said you had not like a suspicion, but perhaps you question conductors that are too chummy with the musicians, because in the real world, a conductor's friends are other kind of like composers, basically. Like, conductors should be hanging out with other conductors and composers and sort of like mingling too much with that sort of level. I don't say low, it's just a different level of the organization. It's kind of not serious behavior. And then I remember you said that, and then I noticed that the conductors that I liked are kind of bastards. They're kind of above it all, and
they're tyrants,
uncompromising. And I actually like them, maybe because they're just more effective. And I respect people who are effective and get the job done and bring everything together and make it work. Like, I like that. And maybe it's also a slightly masculine opinion and a masculine worldview, is that I regard playing a symphony as kind of just a big teamwork activity, right? It's not teamwork like a soccer team with a star. It's more like a big, massive chain link fence or something, where everyone's just got to do their job, be the chain link fence, don't get distracted, be disciplined, be tense, get it done, and like finish the job. Like, I regard as playing a symphony as a bit of a task, and a teamwork task, and a very special teamwork task. And like, not everyone can be a leader. And I have a question for you. Do you think that orchestras played more together rhythmically in the past than they do today? Because I've been listening to a bunch of recordings recently of extremely high level orchestras playing like rhythmic music, like Mendelssohn's Scherzo, for example, and it's not together. And I'm curious if you've ever thought about that or noticed it.
Okay, I'm going to attempt to answer two things that you just mentioned. One, the chumminess of conductors versus the tyrant conductors, and orchestral rhythm. So my music director in the Nashville Symphony, Giancarlo Guerrero, was a former player. He was a percussionist, which is a little bit of an unusual path to the front of the orchestra. Yeah. So he said, he went from holding 2 sticks in the back of the orchestra to 1 in the front. I always thought that was a good line. So he thought, first of all, that because he was a musician, that he sort of understood us and he could be our friends, and, he could be a boss, but also like one of us. And that I was okay with that. But the other thing that he thought was that the conductor's role is essentially to be a metronome up in the front. Like, that's obviously what you would expect if you spent your life playing percussion and drum set and all this. But I don't necessarily think that's what a conductor is for. The musicians can tap into this higher order of rhythm by listening to each other. And a conductor is there to make phrases happen, to point out what's important, to to just kind of shape the sound of the orchestra and make the artistic decisions about tempo here and there, and keep everything clear. But an orchestra that is obsessed with rhythm is going to sacrifice color and a little bit of expression in the name of tightness, which my personal style, I would call myself a bold, risk-taking player. Like I like to really go for stuff, which means I have some fumbles here and there, not too many, but I'm willing to try to play really soft and risk something not coming out, or like try to play really exuberantly at the expense of the beauty of my sound every once in a while. But that kind of thing kind of gets squashed into the middle if you're just always obsessing about rhythm. So, and going back to what I said about conductors trying to be friends, that was sort of the beginning of the downfall I had at the Nashville Symphony. Not to go too deeply into it, because anybody who wants to know the story can Google my name followed by the word fired and read the article and see all my commentary on it. But
disgraced is my favorite word. Just about disgraced.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, I was taking a stand against an ideology, against a former colleague who I thought was my ally. That was an eye-opener. But it was really against a conductor who tried to do something very improper to a black colleague of mine at a botched blind audition. And I believe in the blind audition process as the best system for hiring orchestral players. It's flawed because the audition game is so different from the playing in the orchestra game, because there's no audience, there's no other players to vibe with, and it's kind of like a typing test for a secretary. But it's the best system we have, and it does a good job a lot of the time for selecting for great players who are diligent. But it was a stand I essentially took against a conductor who wanted to play above the rules because he was trying to be a tyrant. And, we have unions here in this country. We have collective bargaining agreements that spell out how we hire people. And I was involved in all those committees and processes that make those rules happen. And I'm a stickler for the rules. I think we should play by them because, a lot of the customs that we have and traditions and orchestras have made them a lot better over the years. So, I think maybe a conductor with a little bit more foresight wouldn't have tried to do what my ex-boss did. But, all those people got away with it, and they still have their jobs, and they've ascended to the highest levels of the profession. And I write software for a living, so maybe you shouldn't try to do what I did.
When do you start at Knoxville?
That's a long story.
Okay, maybe I'm presuming too much. I don't need to talk about it.
No. So for anybody who has been following me, I won that audition and I haven't started yet. And there's going to be some more discussion about how that all played out. Even though I won the audition unanimously, you haven't seen me posting about playing there yet. There's a reason for that at the moment. But suffice it to say that some of my past is continuing to follow me to this very day and making it difficult to make a living because, to make a living as a musician anyway. There's been a lot of changes in this country, not to go too political, but there is one issue that I am following very closely, which is Trump's takeover of the Kennedy Center. As people who follow politics may know that as soon as Donald Trump was reinaugurated, he fired the CEO of the National Symphony, who plays in the Kennedy Center, which is a performance venue in Washington, D.C. that houses the National Symphony and the Washington National Opera. Trump took over, appointed his own CEO, which of course caused like apoplectic reaction by musicians and all kinds of people. But it's going extremely well. They've raised a lot of money. They brought in a lot of right-wing donors. And I think Trump is trying to make an example of the Kennedy Center, saying, arts are under leftist control, and it's not fair to conservative players to have to be ostracized the way they have been in the last 10 years. So, I thought that was going to be a beacon. But suffice it to say that some orchestras are doubling down and trying to keep the customs that they installed during the DEI era in place and kind of ride out Trump's presidency and turn the lights back on in 2028. So it's a battleground. The arts are unfortunately a battleground, and I find myself immersed in it, not because I wanted to be, but because These agendas came right to the doorstep of the Nashville Symphony, and me being what I am, a right-leaning regular guy who goes to church and doesn't put up with leftist ideologies, I became a target for all this stuff. And I was a star player in the Nashville Symphony, which makes people who were installed in the orchestra not by the audition process, but by being shoehorned in on their identity and the color of their skin, makes those people really mad when they have to when they can't hang with people who got there the old-fashioned way. So it's a lot of complexity to what I just said, I realize, but I did not choose consciously to try to be some political activist in music. I really just like playing clarinet a lot, and I like music a lot, and I know how to do it. And it's a good way to make money if you're at the top of the game, but it's not as easy for me as it used to be.
No, well, I wish you all the best. I hope that you end up, assuming your throne, let's say. And on the plus side, you're ostracized for diversity, for inclusive reasons. So you're excommunicated in the name of inclusivity, which is, I don't know.
That's the irony, right?
It's very, very ironic. I remember I was listening to a podcast about Soviet Russia, because everyone does that. We all think about Soviet Russia a lot, and this Russian guy said everyone was a communist. Everyone said they were a communist. Everyone shouted that they were a communist. And then in 1 nanosecond, not only was nobody a communist, nobody ever was a communist. That was his experience being around, that part of the world, is that everyone was on board. Everyone was fighting the revolution. Everyone was screaming about fighting revolution. Then seemingly overnight, nobody was a communist. So I'm curious, do you think that at all applies to the orchestra scene? Because I wouldn't call myself a conservative, but I would call myself a weirdo. I've been a libertarian in the past. I go to church, I have 5 kids. I'm a weirdo, whatever. I'm a strange person. I'm gonna have 6 kids soon. And in the orchestra scene, that makes me a weird, strange, supposedly rainbow character in that I'm a strange person. And I think that the vast majority of classical musicians either don't care or they're just going along with the flow. What's your impression of the sort of the workforce, whether or not they're on board with, let's just say, everything that the orchestra says in public that's not musical, which you could put that into a big bucket. Everything that's not musical could be anything. It could be the current thing, could be whatever the current thing is, What do you reckon the workforce thinks about the current things and that orchestra in general? On board, little soldiers, or not on board?
I think most people do not care at all.
Yeah.
I think most people just are there to make music, but never underestimate the power of 2 or 3 really ideologically charged individuals with too much time on their hands to overthrow an entire institution. That's what happened in Nashville. These people prowl the hallways. They make book clubs. They make diversity luncheons that are struggle sessions, and they force everybody to toe the line or say the party line. And if they don't, they're going to do to you what they did to me. So it's fascinating. I seriously underestimated the power of these people to just manipulate everybody around them by complaining about how they're victims all the time. And most people will go along with it because they want to save their jobs. It's really hard to get a job in an orchestra. It's really hard to get a job in a bad orchestra. And it's even harder to get a job in a good orchestra and set up a good life. People are willing to say just about whatever they want, to whatever they have to keep their jobs. I personally wasn't, because I, have morals and I have a sense of, the bigger picture about what kind of person that turns you into if you're a liar at work and then you got to come home and look your kid in the eye. But yeah, I am not going to be forced to care about things that I don't care about. There was an agenda in the late 2010s about how the orchestra didn't have enough diversity, or it doesn't have enough women, or it doesn't have enough gay people, or it doesn't have enough trans people. And I'm just I don't care at all if there's more women in this orchestra. If we have an audition and the best player is a woman, great. Hallelujah. For the people who wanted more women, great. That's good for you. Personally, I don't care one way or the other. That happened all the time. Women won many auditions when I was there, and they came in and they killed it as players. Great. Do I wish they were a man? No, I don't care if they're a man or a woman. They can sit down and play, and that's it. I don't care if they're black or straight or whatever. If you can come in, play, and leave, why should I care about anything more than that?
There's a very mainstream attitude not so long ago, you just said out there. It's like not caring about immutable characteristics and caring about the mission, which is to,
Yeah.
play the symphony, play it so well that you make people cry and come back again. Play, move people, be moving. You've brought up risk twice. The first was in the case of you're the kind of musician who would play a phrase with aiming for something, let's say, a little bit transcendental, and that might cause an error, let's say. My wife is actually like that, and she's a French hornist, so she'll miss entries because she wants it to be delicate. She splits more than the average French horn player because she's trying to play something really special, like a new. She's not the most cautious player you'll ever meet, and she had like an orchestral career in a decent couple of solo orchestras, a couple of contracts. Getting deported was lame. I mean, you got fired, we got deported. So I have some kind of commonality with you, having some kind of feeling of what it's like to have your lifestyle ripped away from you for absolutely no good reason. In my case, it's bureaucratic and corrupt. Your case sounds kind of bureaucratic and corrupt as well. So I didn't understand the language particularly well as my deporters, which was put me at a bit of a disadvantage. But it's hard when you're up against a big team, be it a government, be it an entire board. It's hard. It's hard as an individual. And as Ayn Rand said, the ultimate individual is the ultimate minority is the individual. There is no more easily crushed, easily discriminated against minority than one guy. So if you're one guy out there, or if you're one girl out there, welcome to the club. You are the ultimate minority. You have all of the victim points you will ever get just by a facet of being one person. Because if a team tries to take you out, they probably will, and they will be able to take you out. There's not much you're going to be able to do about it. So you brought up risk twice, which was risking music and risking talking. So you're a risky player and a risky talker. I like it. And you brought up systems twice as well, talking about I can't remember the first time, but like the DEI system versus the blind audition. We don't have the word DEI in Australia. That phrase doesn't exist where I'm from because we don't have as tuned in propagandists in my country. Like we don't put much effort into labeling things and giving things sexy packages. For example, we have a union for teachers and it's called the Teachers Union, which is it's not good branding. That makes it sound like you're in it for the teachers. In America, you have the Education Union, which is a much better propagandistic term to have. So Australia, we're just kind of less developed than you guys. But do you think like the system of like diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's a goal. It's not a musical goal, but it's a goal and it's a system. Let's say, I think that like if you were to characterize the right wing in America, they're systems people. They're like their constitution, for example. The constitution is just a system. Like your average conservative probably likes blind auditions because blind auditions, whatever, they're just a system. They seem to kind of work, not all the time. Equal temperament is a system. Like there's a lot of systems out there that people like. And they say, they're not perfect, but they kind of do the job. And then you have idealists on the other side. And I feel like the asylum is being run at the moment by idealists. And it's a bit pathological. Do you think that in the worst case scenario, do you think that the systematic people could also destroy the orchestra in their own kind of way? Like just look into the future of what's happening to the Kennedy Center and imagine like if it were run by absolute bean counting accountants and system obsessed tech overlords or whatever. Do you think they would still be making good music, playing good symphonies? Or do you think that the idealists are right to fear the systematic thinkers?
Well, they are right to fear it. And it's this beautiful two-party system that we have, which keeps enough tension in the room to, there's always that little bit of disturbance, that little bit of clashing between one side or the other, the necessity of the individual having empathy, cognitive empathy, and going from one side to the other, considering things from multiple angles. Ultimately, you're picking a side. Eventually, there are centrists in this country, but even they, on certain issues that are important to them, have to go to one side or the other and make a choice at the ballot box. But no, I don't think total control by one side or the other is the answer. I mean, arts is supposed to exist above all that anyway. And for a long time it did. It was, we all could recognize that leave your politics at the door, come in here and elevate yourself to a higher state. And, on systems, that's an interesting way of thinking about it. The audition is a system, the blind audition system. And that was a musician-led idea, 60, 70 years ago, whatever it is, where, musicians were saying, I don't like that orchestras are populated by the good old boys network of the conductors, just, kind of plucking their friends from the top music schools. Like, I may have gone to a small state school, but I've got as much talent and ability as anybody. I want a shot at this. So or women were saying, there's a ton of sexism. We don't see enough women in orchestras. Let's put up a screen. So what happened when they put up a screen? In one generation, orchestras go from being almost entirely men to being 50-50 in one generation. What does that tell you? That tells you there was a flaw in that system before of just picking the good old boys, and we were shutting women out. So we come up with this new egalitarian system, and look, now we're 50-50. So we solved the sexism problem. Why did it not correct the amount of racial minorities in the orchestra? That is a big question. And it's hard to address that question without sounding bigoted in some ways. So I'm not going to wade into it much, but it would appear that, certain demographics excel at certain things more than others. Like, look at professional sports, look at the NBA, look at the computer programming industry, look at the mathematics industry. Like, certain groups excel in certain things, and maybe classical music is just much more suited to European Americans because that's where the tradition comes from. I don't know if it's a problem or not. It's just an observation. But again, going back to the system of the blind audition, does anybody have a better idea? Because the DEI people are saying that fails Black Americans. We need to put them in the orchestra through some other way. But that causes a lot of resentment, and it causes a lot of dissolving of the teamwork nature of orchestras, because anybody that's in an orchestra can say, hey, I got here on merit. Nobody knew who I was when I auditioned. I was a number just like everybody else. They like my playing and they let me in. Now I got to sit next to this woman who's here because she's from another country or because she was underrepresented. Like, how are we going to have trust when we didn't take the same route to get in here?
Yeah, it's definitely eroding to the team spirit and fraternity and everyone having, in a way, like an audition is so traumatic. Well, not necessarily traumatic, but it's so difficult. It's kind of like getting hazed before you even start the job. It's kind of like we can all join hands and say, like, yeah, we all got hazed together, didn't we? That was pretty brutal. That was a hard world. And yeah, it's just the whole system thing really does occupy my mind. I mean, I read a book a while ago by Thomas Sowell called Disparity and Discrimination is the title. Just statistically, everything will have disparities no matter what. Like, you can't, it's the rule. It's not an exception. It's not evidence of something special or some kind of like a commission, like a sin of commission. If you see a disparity in a certain anything, any demographic or any place, any workplace, any sporting team, anything like that, it's actually guaranteed, statistically guaranteed for there to be disparities. If you look at any one kind of characteristic or slice the pie anyway, you're going to find disparities. You don't find homogeneity or equal representation anywhere in nature, not in trees, not in fungus in the ground, not in orchestras, nowhere. You just don't find it. It's kind of like denial. Maybe that's kind of the utopian, what utopians all have in common is this just denial of nature and what it is and how a cookie crumbles.
Absolutely. Equality it sounds great on paper, but there's a whole different, it's a huge difference between equality of opportunity and equality of outcome. And all we're trying to do in orchestras, or I think anywhere, especially in this country, America, we're trying to make sure that everybody has an equal opportunity. And people who have been historically marginalized, we want to give them a boost in the present day. I'm not against that whatsoever. Some people have had a harder road in the past than others, but nature is brutal and people are brutal, and pluralist society is a difficult thing. And I love America and I love American orchestras. I think they're really sick with a lot of bad ideas right now, but I think the data is in now, a decade after this stuff sort of really took hold. And as an outside observer who clearly has what it takes to get back in on a merit level, I remain very skeptical of the people in charge. But like I said, I'm playing the long game, and I am protecting my playing. It's another really hard thing when you're, like you said, the eroding of the teamwork aspect. If you're playing around ideologues all the time who are trying to stand out and exceed their neighbors. It's very bad for your playing. Like, you have to contort your technique and everything into a very unnatural box, and it was killing my playing. So I play a lot less now than I used to, but when I'm back in shape, it's like, yeah, this is how I like to do it. And it's been good for me as a player to kind of be a sideline sort of hobbyist side hustler now. And I don't have to sell my playing out to playing a whole bunch of concerts I don't want to do. I play what I like. And so my original goal is intact. Just try to get better and protect my my craft from getting ruined in a terrible workplace, and just keep the bills paid some other way. Could be a lot worse.
Yeah, it could be a lot worse. I mean, if I could choose to be alive at any year in human history, I think I would still pick the year 2025. I'd still pick it. It's pretty cool. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Even what we're doing right now is quite amazing. You said so many interesting things today. I think something that I will remember is the idea of treating high-level classical musicians, not treating, but maybe encouraging them to go down the route of almost like an athletic persona. Public persona is almost like an athlete. And it definitely works because like, I loved Roger Federer before I even learned to play tennis. And now I love tennis, and now I play it all the time, and I'm basically obsessed with tennis. But it actually did start through a personality kind of route. I loved the grace. I loved the way he spoke. I loved what he said. I loved the discipline. I liked everything about him as like a package. And I thought, wow, maybe I'll like go watch him actually do what he does, which is play tennis. And that was like life-changing experience to watch someone at that level do what he does that well and with such grace and such, power and such everything, poise. It's like we all need role models and heroes like that. And why not let them be classical musicians, that kind of thing. Before we wrap up, I just want to ask two quick questions. What would you tell a kid today who wants to become a musician, sort of who has their eyes cast towards musicians like you, that level classical musician?
So I have my own students asking me this all the time, and I would tell them what I have espoused here in this conversation, which is you have to be great at this to have any sort of chance at fulfillment. So your goal should not primarily be what are you going to do professionally, though you do need some sort of plan around which to organize your education and the blood, sweat, and tears you're going to put into it. Your primary goal has to be becoming a master of the art form or the craft, however you want to think of it. And be aware that there's all kinds of opportunities in music. Not everybody's going to get to be a player. Some people are going to go into arts management, or some people are going to go into development, or some people are going to go into education, or some people are going to become writers or internet personalities. So always have your ear to the ground on what kind of opportunities are out there. But when you get into the practice room, channel your passions. If they're not there, abandon it as soon as possible and change gears. But if they are, and you're continuing to make progress, that's where your focus should always be, is on the skills, not on the opportunities. The opportunities will come to the skilled.
What you just said reminded me a lot of, there's a massive chess streamer called Gotham Chess. I don't know if you follow chess streaming at all, but he was asked, who are his best chess students? Like, does anything kind of characterize your best ones? And he just said, there's only one type of good chess student, and that's the obsessed ones. If you're obsessed with chess, you get exceptionally good at chess. If you're obsessed by thinking about it all day, and Magnus Carlsen said the same thing. It's just like, 5 minutes doesn't go by without me thinking about chess. So that's the kind of level. If you are that kind of person, your brain's wired in that kind of way. I know from the age of about 10 to the age of 25, I was thinking about clarinet pretty much constantly, all day, every day, and I became obsessed. So it's no wonder I play well. It has something to do with that kind of that predisposition, or that. And you don't really get to choose your obsessions. Do you think you do? Do you think you can choose your obsession?
No, they find you. They're kind of ingrained. It's so funny, by the way, that you and I have a lot of the same heroes. Roger Federer, Magnus Carlsen. I love both of them. I've studied both of them deeply, and I agree with everything you said about both. Like, recently heard Magnus Carlsen on Joe Rogan saying that, like, right up until the time I sat down in this chair, I was thinking about this game that I played yesterday, and something that happened in the mid game. I just couldn't believe this. And this is a guy who's already like at the top of the mountain, and they're still thinking about getting better. And so much of what those guys say, like Magnus talking about, he's not the greatest studier. Like there's younger players now with better AI engines to teach them, and music is the same way. They have easier and cheaper access to resources and education. But Magnus just says, it's my intuition. Like I just have this feeling out there. Like I just know what's going to come next. So that's the answer to your question. Can you choose your obsessions, or is there just like something he unearthed? He found, he's talked about it himself. He's like, I don't consider myself any type of genius. I just am some guy that found the thing he's really good at and just dove deep on it. So that's how I feel about my own obsessions. Like this stuff, like even making bread. It's like when I started doing it, I was like, I know how to do this. Like I already know how to do this. I'm just channeling something.
Yeah, get better and better at it. It's I like. It's funny we have similar kind of. Maybe it's a clarinet player thing. I do think there are stereotypes of clarinet players and what we enjoy. I could talk to you all day, but where do you think music? So before this conversation, we spoke about like parenting, being a father, having kids, going to church, being Catholic, all sorts of things. There's a lot of facets to a human's life. Even these crazy monomaniacal freaks of nature like Magnus Carlsen and Roger Federer and you, if you toss you in the mix, let's say I'll toss Martin first in there as well. These people, they do have lives, and they are people with lives, and they have fully formed lives, and they appear from the outside to be living them well. And I don't know is it like Aristotle who said that you want to have like an observed life, or like a life well lived is kind of one of the goals of even being alive, is to live a good life. How does music fit in? How does being a high level clarinet player, where does it slot in to a life well lived in your world, in your view?
Okay, I think I have the perfect answer for this, and I've thought about it a lot, especially in the last 5 years, since I am not an all day long musician anymore. You know, in the medieval concept of a great education has this concept of the trivium and the quadrivium. The trivium being logic, rhetoric, and grammar. Those are the three things that every really well-formed, educated person focuses on the most: logic, rhetoric, and grammar. Then there's the second order of subjects in the quadrivium, which is arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music, which are important to study, but they act as a buttress to the main things that every person must know: logic, rhetoric, and grammar. So music exists in this abstract world. It's something that makes so much sense to me. The things I can hear naturally, because I've been around music so much, I've thought about it so deeply, help me develop an understanding of the world and of myself, and of my own relation to the world. But it's all very abstract. So what I spend time on X doing now is like working on my language, working on my ability to package my ideas in very short bursts and interface with people who are also very good at doing this, and to concretize my thoughts about music, not in music itself, but into language, and to have good grammar, to have good flow to my sentences, to have conversations like this one with very smart people who are also inclined to search for greatness. So what is music's role, you ask? It's a thing on the outskirts of the complete person. You can't put it in the center of the fully formed person. It's like you can step out of yourself and sit down at the piano or sit down with a clarinet and just let it take you where it takes you. But you always have to come back to something more concrete to be a complete person, which for me, you know, it's the gospel, it's your household, it's your family, it's your front yard. It's the stuff that you can really sink your teeth into. Music is too ethereal and mysterious and magical to ever really understand fully. There's a mysterious nature to it, which I love chasing it. Like I love, there's some kind of chase with music, and I just want to run after it with all my might. Like even when I'm playing in a beautiful hall, like I play a solo, you can actually feel it come out of you and go out into the hall, and it's like it's gone already. And I just want to, there's momentum to sound, but it's something you can't put your hands on. So it's something to contemplate, and it's something that's there to help you deepen your understanding of the things that can be understood a little bit more easily. So it's a tool above all else. And it's one that the fully formed person, like all these huge brains on X, like to talk about music a lot. They might not have the conservatory language. They might not have the encyclopedic knowledge of the symphonic repertoire, but they can recognize good music, a lot of these really smart guys and girls. So I love being able to talk with them about it, elevate their understanding, and there's real connection that happens between music. So whether you're connecting with your inner sense of self, other people, or the God that you worship, music is there for to keep life mysterious, I think.
Fascinating. You don't hear sentences like that very often in any on any platform. I think you're an interesting person because you have the philosophy, the language, the high level musicianship, the interest in systems, the interest in other things as well, and the core center of family and religion. I think people like you maybe were more common 100 years ago. It was a more standard kind of framework for a symphony musician or an artist of any type. I mean, Charles Ives famously said that he didn't want his family to starve on his dissonances, so he sold
I love that quote.
Yeah, that's it.
I think about him all the time.
So maybe this is a more common mentality, but it's just something about the richness of our society, just how much we have at our fingertips, that people think they can base their entire soul around something as ineffable and as something like music. It's difficult to become the fully formed person with that at your nucleus, and then build a lifestyle around it. I'm glad I didn't try. Let's just say that. I'm glad I didn't.
If I could just make one more point to add on something that you said, Plato was a boxer, and it's important to, if you see statues of him, he's a giant, and sometimes to settle disputes with him and other philosophers, just stand up and flex, because that's what it boils down to at some point. And thinking for the old philosophers, there were no philosophers back then. Philosophy is something that you live. It's not something that you study or you do. And so is music. It's like a musical life is not just going into an orchestra and playing and just making everything about your craft. It's a part of a life. So I appreciate your saying that I come across as a Renaissance man with many interests. And yes, I have mastered a few things, but it's this completeness and this ability to live according to a system of values and morals that is always a challenge to choose the right thing to do, to know how to spend your time and your energy. And but it's a lifestyle. Music is a way of life, and just because I'm not a professional anymore doesn't mean that I've given up the way of life or what it's done for my mind. And thinking about these people who have come before us, from Charles Ives 100 years ago to Plato thousands of years ago, these are interesting thinkers from whom we can learn a lot. So we have an obligation to keep doing it.
You make me regret choosing Instagram as my main platform, because I see the conversations you have on X with all the planet brains, and I think, man, no one ever talks about Aristotle in my comments. No one ever talks about anything kind of deep. So I might move over. I might do a bit of a migration sooner or later. It's just that, whatever, I made a few jokes on Instagram that went viral, and then before you know it, if you're following and if you're talking to them, these things, just they're gifts, I suppose, or curses. Who knows? I mean, I'll know on my deathbed, won't I, if having an audience is a gift or a curse, that kind of thing. Speaking of politics, just one last little thing to tie it all together. There's a clip of Sacha Baron Cohen, the comedian.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard of Donald Trump. But about 20 years ago, maybe even more than 20 years ago, Sacha Baron Cohen, in one of his characters, he was playing the character of Ali G, and he was doing an interview.
I remember him.
Let's say like this. And Ali G, if you don't know, and Sacha Baron Cohen pretty much tries to elicit humorous, let's say, sometimes they're good-natured, sometimes they're a little bit set-uppy, but try to turn someone else into an unwilling performer, which incidentally is Michael Malice's definition of a troll, somebody who turns somebody else into a performer, which is a funny, for an audience, that's what a troll does, a funny kind of definition. So Sacha Baron Cohen's a bit of a troll, and he's interviewing Donald Trump, and Sacha Baron Cohen is trying to set up Donald Trump to give a dumb answer to a question. And Sacha Baron Cohen's, or Ali G's, question is, what's something that everybody loves? And Donald Trump pauses, thinks for about 15 seconds, and as a genius marketing guy, says music is his answer. Something that will always work. Something that will work in every advertising context, no matter what, in every setting. Something that everybody appreciates and loves is music. And it killed the joke. So Ali G couldn't recover. Sacha Baron Cohen couldn't recover. He was expecting something dumb, like money or something, some kind of answer like that. But instead, Donald Trump, 20 years ago, said music was his answer. And I think about that a lot.
Smarter than a lot of people realize, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he is. All right, James, I've had a fabulous time today. I think we'll sign off, but where can people find you?
My X account is great. Just x.com/James Zimmerman with 2 N's, the German spelling. But I have a website, slimzim.com. That's a placeholder. And I'm on Instagram as SlimZim. SlimZim is my handle pretty much everywhere except on X. Couldn't get that one soon enough. But yeah, Google anything. You'll find all sorts of interesting stuff out there about me.
Cool. Thank you, James. Thank you for the gift of your time.
Thank you for having me.